Here's my share. The rest, you can pay yourselves.
The steakhouse smelled like money and BS, which seemed fitting for my wife's birthday celebration. I sat at the corner of our oversized table, watching Lena's friends demolish their third round of top-shelf martinis while they pretended I didn't exist. "So, Danny," Mara said, leaning forward with that carnivore smile she'd perfected over years of destroying people's confidence. "Lena tells us you're still working at the garage." The way she said "still" made it sound like I was collecting unemployment checks and living in my mother's basement. I took a sip of my beer, the only drink under $20 on this menu, and nodded. "Thompson's Auto Repair. 15 years next month." "How stable," said Jessica, another member of Lena's carefully curated friend group. She worked at some marketing firm downtown and never let anyone forget it. Lena squeezed my hand under the table, but her smile looked forced. "Danny's the best mechanic in town. He can fix anything." "Except your financial situation," Mara muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the same feeling I got when customers tried to stiff me on a repair bill. But this was Lena's birthday, so I kept my mouth shut and watched my wife's friends order another round of appetizers that cost more than most people's grocery budget. The conversation drifted to their usual topics: spa treatments, vacation plans to places I'd never afford, complaints about their high-paying jobs. I found myself studying Lena's face, looking for some sign that she was as uncomfortable as I was. Instead, she seemed to glow under her friends' attention, laughing at their inside jokes and nodding along with their subtle digs at my expense. "Oh my God," squealed Rachel, the youngest of the group at 28. "Did you see Graham's new apartment? The one overlooking the river?" Graham. I knew that name. Lena had mentioned him a few times, some hotshot associate at her law firm who'd just made partner. Young, ambitious, everything I apparently wasn't. "It's incredible," Lena said, and something in her voice made me look up. "The view is just breathtaking." "When did you see Graham's apartment?" I asked. The table went quiet for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for me to know I'd stepped in something deep. "Work event," Lena said quickly. "The whole office was there for his promotion party." Mara's smile got sharper. "Right, the whole office." The waiter appeared with perfect timing, setting down plates that looked more like art installations than food. My steak was the size of a hockey puck, and probably cost more than I made in a day. "So, Danny," Jessica said, cutting into her salmon, "what do you think of Lena's promotion?" My wife: "What promotion?" "I told you," Lena said, but her eyes were focused on her plate. "Senior associate. It comes with a raise and everything." "When did this happen?" "Last week. I've been so busy with the transition." Another lie. I could tell because Lena always touched her necklace when she lied, a nervous habit she'd had since we started dating 8 years ago. Her fingers were wrapped around that little gold chain right now. "We should celebrate," I said. "Just the two of us. Somewhere quiet." "Oh, but we're celebrating now," Mara interrupted. "With friends. Speaking of which." She signaled the waiter over and whispered something in his ear. He nodded and walked away. 5 minutes later, he returned with the check. $843 for one meal. "Here you go, sir," he said, placing it directly in front of me. I stared at the number, feeling everyone's eyes on me. In the silence, I could hear the restaurant's jazz music, the clink of glasses from other tables, the sound of my own heartbeat. "Danny?" Lena's voice was small, uncertain. I looked around the table at these women who'd spent the entire evening making me feel like something they'd scrape off their designer shoes. Then I looked at my wife, who was supposed to be on my side, but had been nodding along with every subtle insult. "You know what?" I said, standing up and pulling out my wallet. "You're absolutely right." I counted out $37, enough to cover my beer and steak, and placed it on the table. "This should cover my portion." Lena's face went white. "Danny, what are you doing?" "Proving my worth," I said. "Turns out it's exactly $37, not a penny more." Walking toward the exit, leaving behind the shocked silence and the sound of Lena calling my name. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck for a few minutes, hands shaking as I tried to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. Text from Lena. How could you embarrass me like that? Simmons, then another. My friends had to pay the bill. Do you know how that looked? We need to talk when I get home. I was about to start the engine when I saw him. Graham, standing next to a silver BMW, checking his phone. He looked exactly like I'd imagined. Tall, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. He glanced up and saw me watching. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the parking lot. Then he smiled. Not friendly, but knowing. Like he was in on a joke I hadn't figured out yet. That's when I knew my marriage was over. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to Rick's place, a rundown cottage on the east side of town where my best friend lived with his 2 dogs and a collection of vintage boxing equipment. Rick had been trying to get me back in the ring for months, claiming I needed an outlet for my frustrations. Turned out he was right. She set you up, Rick said, handing me a beer from his ancient refrigerator. The whole thing was planned. You think? Brother, I've seen ambushes before. That wasn't a birthday dinner. That was an execution. Rick had done 2 tours in the Middle East before coming back to work construction. He understood strategy and betrayal better than most people. He also understood loyalty, which was why he'd been my best friend since high school, despite our different paths in life. The question is why, I said. What's the end game? Maybe she wants out but doesn't want to be the bad guy. Make you look like the a-hole, then file for divorce claiming emotional abandonment or some crap. I thought about Graham in the parking lot, that knowing smile. There's someone else. You sure? Pretty sure. Relinquid nodded grimly. Then we need proof. The next morning, I called in sick to work, first time in 3 years, and started paying attention to my wife's routine. Lena had always been organized, methodical. She left for work at 7:30, came home around 6, spent evenings on her laptop or phone. But now I noticed the little changes. She'd started dressing differently. More expensive clothes, subtle but significant. Her hair was styled differently too, and she'd been wearing perfume I'd never smelled before. Most telling of all, she'd been taking calls in the other room, speaking in hushed tones. Working late again tonight, she announced over breakfast, not meeting my eyes. Big case? Several big cases. The promotion comes with more responsibility. Sluggish. Another lie. Her fingers went straight to that necklace. After she left, I did something I'd never done before. I went through her things. Not proud of it, but desperate times and all that. In her dresser, hidden under some old sweaters, I found receipts. Expensive restaurants, a hotel downtown, a jewelry store, all from the past month. All paid for with a credit card I'd never seen before. The jewelry store receipt was dated 3 days ago. A men's watch, $1,500. My phone rang. Rick. You free for lunch? Yeah, why? Because your wife just walked into Marcello's with a guy who ain't you. Marcello's was the fancy Italian place downtown, the kind of restaurant Lena and I had never been to because we couldn't afford it. I met Rick in the parking lot across the street, and he handed me a pair of binoculars. Table by the window, he said. I focused the lenses and felt my stomach drop. There was Lena, laughing at something the man across from her was saying. He was wearing an expensive suit and a watch that caught the light when he moved his hand. Graham. But it wasn't just lunch. I watched them hold hands across the table. Watched Lena lean forward to whisper something in his ear. Watched him kiss her fingers when he thought no one was looking. How long have they been in there? I asked. About an hour. Ordered wine, the works. They look pretty comfortable. I handed back the binoculars. I need to get closer. Danny, don't do anything stupid. I'm not going to confront them. I just need to hear what they're saying. The restaurant had a small bar area near the entrance, separated from the dining room by a decorative screen. I ordered a coffee and positioned myself where I could see their table through the gaps. The acoustics were good enough that I caught fragments of their conversation. Told him about the promotion, Lena was saying. Believes everything, Graham replied. Feels bad sometimes, but won't be a problem much longer. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough. They were talking about me like I was a minor inconvenience, something to be managed until they could dispose of me properly. The worst part was watching Lena's face. She looked happier than I'd seen her in months, more alive. When she laughed at Graham's jokes, it was genuine. When she looked at me at home, it was like she was looking through me. They finished lunch with more hand-holding and another kiss, this one longer and more intimate. Then Graham paid the check, probably more than I made in a week, and they left together. I watched through the window as he walked her to her car, watched them embrace in the parking lot like lovers who'd been together for years. My phone buzzed. Text from Lena. Working through lunch today. Might be late tonight, too. Discharged at the message for a long time, trying to figure out when my wife had become a stranger. Then I typed back, "No problem. I understand." But I didn't understand. Not yet. That would come later, when I learned exactly how deep this betrayal went, and how long they'd been planning my humiliation. For now, all I knew was that the woman I'd loved for 8 years, the woman I'd married and built a life with, was sitting in another man's car, probably planning our divorce while I sat alone in a restaurant, drinking cold coffee and wondering where the hell I'd gone wrong. The next few days passed in a surreal haze. Lena continued her charade, coming home with stories about difficult clients and demanding partners, while I nodded and pretended to believe her. Meanwhile, Rick and I had started what he called reconnaissance missions. We followed her to 3 more lunch dates with Graham, documented her visits to his apartment building, and discovered she'd been using a credit card I'd never seen, one that wasn't connected to our joint account. But the real breakthrough came when Rick's ex-girlfriend, who worked at the phone company, helped us get Lena's call records. "Holy crap," Rick said, studying the printout. "Look at this." Numbers didn't lie. Lena had been calling Graham multiple times a day for the past 3 months. Some calls lasted hours, usually late at night when she claimed to be working on case files. But it was the timing that really got to me. The calls had started right around the time she'd begun suggesting we have dinner with her friends more often. "This whole thing was orchestrated," I said. "The dinner, the humiliation, all of it." "But why? If she wanted to leave, why not just ask for a divorce?" I thought about that for a long time. Lena was a lawyer. She understood contracts, negotiations, leverage. She also understood that in our state, infidelity could affect divorce settlements. She wants me to leave her, I realized. If I'm the one who walks away, if I'm the one who looks like the bad guy, she keeps everything. The house, the savings, her reputation. Triumph. Devious. Effective. That night, Lena announced she was going to work late again. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then drove to Graham's apartment building. His BMW was in the parking garage, along with a car I recognized as Lena's. The building had decent security, but Rick had taught me a few things about getting into places I wasn't supposed to be. 20 minutes later, I was standing in the hallway outside Graham's apartment, listening to my wife's laughter through the thin walls. What I heard next made me wish I'd never come. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning my complete destruction. Through the door, I could hear them discussing timeline, strategy, even specific things Lena would say to make me look unstable during divorce proceedings. "The dinner was perfect," Graham was saying. "He looked like a complete loser walking out like that." Teammates. "Mara got it all on video," Lena replied. "His face when he saw the check, priceless." Gmail. "Your friends are brutal. I love it. They hate him. Always have. They think I settled." You did settle, but not for much longer. I heard movement, then sounds I definitely didn't want to hear. I was about to leave when Lena's voice stopped me cold. "I almost feel bad sometimes. He's not a terrible person." "He's silenced, Graham. He's pathetic," Graham said. "A grown man who works with his hands for a living. What kind of future is that?" "You're right. I deserve better. You deserve everything. And once we're married, you'll have it." Married. They were already planning their wedding while I was still paying the mortgage on the house, where my wife was supposed to be living with me. I made it back to my truck before the rage really hit. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, calculating kind that Rick had warned me about during his darker moments. The kind that led to plans. By the time I got home, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The first step was documentation. Over the next week, I photographed everything. The receipts, the credit card statements I'd found, the call records. Rick helped me set up surveillance outside Graham's apartment, where we captured dozens of photos of Lena coming and going at all hours. The second step was financial protection. I moved our joint savings into an account Lena couldn't access, claiming I was setting up a surprise vacation fund. I also started documenting every expense, every bill, every payment I'd made toward our shared life over the past 8 years. The third step was social engineering. I'm worried about Danny, I told Mara during a carefully orchestrated encounter at the grocery store. He's been acting strange since the dinner, paranoid, jealous. Mara's eyes lit up with the prospect of fresh gossip. Jealous of what? He thinks Lena's having an affair with someone from work, nationality. That's ridiculous. I know, right? But he's been following her, going through her things. I'm afraid he might do something stupid. JFK. Mara had spread the story to Lena's entire friend group. By the next day, they were all treating me with a mixture of pity and suspicion, exactly as I'd planned. When Lena came home that evening, she was armed with concern. Mara says you've been asking questions about me. Just worried about you working so late all the time. Danny, you know you can trust me, right? She was still touching that necklace, still lying. But now I could see the calculation behind her eyes. The way she was measuring my responses, looking for signs of what I knew. Of course I trust you, I said. You're my wife. She smiled and kissed my cheek, and I wondered how I'd ever thought I knew this woman at all. That night, while Lena slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and finalized my plan. It wasn't enough to just expose the affair. I needed to destroy the entire foundation they'd built their betrayal on. I needed to make them understand exactly what they'd underestimated. Tomorrow, I would start showing them the worth of a man who had nothing left to lose. The charity gala was Lena's idea, of course. She'd been organizing it for months, she claimed, though I suspected it was really Graham's project and she was just the front woman. Either way, it was perfect for what I had in mind. It's for the children's hospital, she explained over breakfast, not bothering to look up from her phone. Very important donors will be there. I need you to be on your best behavior. Wouldn't want to embarrass you again. She finally looked at me, studying my face for sarcasm. Danny, about that dinner, forget it. You were right. I should have paid the bill. Relief flooded her features. Really? Really. In fact, I want to make it up to you. And your friends. How? I pulled out an envelope and set it on the table. $2,000. For the charity. Her eyes widened. Where did you get $2,000? Sold some tools. Picked up extra shifts. I've been saving for weeks. It was partially true. I had been working extra, but not for charity. The money was coming from our joint savings, the account she didn't know I'd been monitoring. Danny, that's really sweet. I want people to see that I can provide for my wife, that I'm not just some broke mechanic. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, and for a moment, I almost believed her affection was real. Then her phone buzzed with a text, and I saw Graham's name on the screen. The gala was held at the Riverside Hotel, the fanciest venue in town. I wore my best suit, the one from our wedding, and watched Lena work the room in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She introduced me to donors and dignitaries, her hand on my arm, playing the role of the supportive wife. Graham was there too, of course, looking perfectly at home among the wealthy and powerful. He shook my hand when Lena introduced us, his grip firm and his smile carnivory. So you're the famous Danny, he said. Lena talks about you all the time. All good things, I hope. Taxed. Oh yes, she's very fond of you. Relinquith clock. Fond hit like a slap. You're fond of a pet, not a husband. And you're the hotshot lawyer, I replied. The one with the new apartment. Something flickered in his eyes. Lena mentioned she'd seen it? In detail. She was very impressed with the view. Now he was studying me, trying to figure out what I knew. Good. Let him wonder. The evening progressed exactly as I'd expected. Speeches about helping children, appeals for donations, the usual charity circuit performance. When they called for contributions, I made sure to be the first to stand. Danny Peterson, I announced, walking to the front of the room. $2,000 for the children's hospital. Polite applause. Lena beamed at me from her table, probably calculating how this would look to her friends. I handed over the envelope and took the microphone. If I could just say a few words? The event coordinator looked uncertain, but the crowd was already settling in to listen. I cleared my throat and began. 8 years ago, I married the most beautiful woman in the world. Lena Peterson. Sorry, Lena Matthews. She kept her maiden name for professional reasons. More polite applause. Lena was smiling, but I could see confusion in her eyes. Marriage is about trust, I continued. About honesty. About being there for each other through good times and bad. I imprisonment and connected it to the room's projection system. The first image appeared on the screen behind me. Lena and Graham holding hands at Marcello's. The room went silent. Unfortunately, I said, not everyone understands those values. More photos flashed on the screen. Lena entering Graham's apartment building. Graham's BMW in our driveway while I was at work. The receipt for the $1,500 watch. Some people think marriage is just a convenience, I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. Something to be discarded when a better option comes along. Lena was on her feet now, her face white with shock and rage. Danny, stop this right now. But here's what I've learned about the worth of a man, I said, ignoring her. It's not measured in dollars or status or the size of your apartment. It's measured in how you treat the people who trust you. The final image appeared on screen. A photo of Graham and Lena kissing in the hotel parking lot, taken just an hour earlier by Rick from his position across the street. And by that measure, I concluded, some people are worth exactly nothing. Slamming. The room erupted. Lena was screaming at me to turn it off. Graham was pushing through the crowd trying to reach the projection controls, and Mara was frantically taking pictures with her phone, probably already planning how to spin this for social media. But I wasn't done. Oh, and one more thing, I announced over the chaos. The $2,000 I just donated, that came from the joint account that my loving wife has been using to fund her affair. So really, you're all being very generous with your own money tonight. Submerged. Security was moving toward me now, but I'd already said everything I needed to say. I disconnected my phone, handed the microphone back to the stunned coordinator, and walked calmly toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear Lena's voice rising above the crowd noise, trying to explain, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. But it was too late. By tomorrow morning, everyone in town would know exactly what kind of woman she really was. In the parking lot, Rick was waiting with the engine running. "How'd it go?" he asked as I climbed into the passenger seat. "Better than expected." "What now?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the video I'd been recording all evening. Not just my speech, but everything that had happened afterward. Graham's panicked attempts to control the damage, Lena's meltdown, Mara's frantic damage control efforts. "Now we wait," I said, and watch them destroy each other trying to figure out who's to blame. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of Graham and Lena in the hotel entrance, screaming at each other while photographers from the local newspaper captured every moment. Their perfect plan was crumbling, and they had no one to blame but themselves. For the first time in months, I smiled. The fallout was swift and brutal. By morning, the video of my charity gala speech had gone viral on social media, shared thousands of times with comments ranging from supportive to savage. The local news picked it up, running a segment about "Charity Scandal Rocks Local Legal Community." Graham's law firm issued a statement about reviewing the situation, which everyone understood to mean he was finished. But I wasn't done yet. Lena came home that afternoon, her face puffy from crying, her expensive dress wrinkled from the night before. She found me in the garage, calmly organizing my tools. "You destroyed everything," she said. "I exposed everything. There's a difference. My career is over."
Graham's career is over. Was that worth it?
The wrench said I was cleaning. You tell me. Was 3 months of sneaking around worth 8 years of marriage? It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? You and your friends humiliate me into leaving, then you file for divorce claiming I abandoned you? Keep the house, the savings, everything we built together while you moved in with your new boyfriend? Her face told me I'd guessed correctly. "I found the apartment lease," I continued. "The one you and Graham signed last month. 2 bedrooms, downtown, available next week." "Were you even going to tell me you were leaving? Or was I supposed to figure it out when I came home to an empty house?" Wraith. I also found the credit card statements. $15,000 in charges over the past 3 months, Hotels, restaurants, jewelry, clothes, all paid for with money from our joint account. She sat down heavily on my workbench, defeat written across her features. What do you want? I want my life back. The one you stole when you decided I wasn't good enough anymore. You can have the house, the savings, everything. I don't want your guilt money, Lena. I want something else. What? I pulled a manila folder and set it in front of her. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out, along with a detailed accounting of every expense, every shared asset, every contribution I'd made to our marriage over 8 years. I want you to sign these papers admitting to infidelity. I want you to waive any claim to alimony or shared assets. And I want you to pay me back the $15,000 you stole. I can't. You can, and you will. Because if you don't, I'll release the rest of the evidence. What rest? I pulled out my phone and showed her a video I'd recorded outside Graham's apartment the week before. In it, she and Graham were discussing their plan in detail, including specific lies they would tell about me during divorce proceedings. This is illegal, she whispered. You can't record people without their consent. Actually, I can. Single-party consent state, remember? You taught me that. She stared at the phone screen, watching herself plot my destruction with the man she'd been cheating with. When the video ended, she looked up at me with something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Fear. If I sign these papers, you sign them, you pack your things, and you leave. Tonight. Graham's lease doesn't start until next week, but I'm sure you'll figure something out. And the video? Stays private, along with everything else I know about your little scheme. She picked up the pen with trembling hands and signed every page without reading them. When she was finished, I handed her a box I'd prepared. Her personal items, her clothes, her jewelry. Everything that was hers and nothing that was ours. Danny, she said as she reached the door. I did love you. Once, I replied. That's what makes this so much worse. After she left, I sat in my garage for a long time, surrounded by the tools and equipment that represented 15 years of honest work. Tomorrow, I would go back to Thompson's Auto Repair and fix cars for people who paid their bills and kept their promises. I would rebuild my life one day at a time, one honest dollar at a time. My phone buzzed with a text from Rick. Saw the news. Graham got fired. Lena's firm is reviewing her status. How you feeling? I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. 3 hours later, Mara learns. Lena's farms later and lively said, like she would live to the cars of Lana. Like she lived. Like a revived. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back, like a man who knows his worth. I typed back. 3 hours later, Mara showed up at my door. She looked terrible, makeup smeared, hair disheveled, the confident hunter replaced by something desperate and cornered. "This is all your fault," she said. "How do you figure?" "Lena was my best friend. Now she won't even return my calls." "Maybe because you helped her plan my humiliation?" "We were trying to help her. You were holding her back." Almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You know what the funny thing is, Mara? You thought you were so smart, so sophisticated. You thought I was just some dumb mechanic who wouldn't figure it out. You are just a mechanic. You're right, I am. I fix things that are broken. And sometimes I throw away things that can't be fixed. She stared at me for a moment. She felt like trance. I adjusted to the link. She stared at me for a moment, then turned and walked away. I watched her drive off in her overpriced SUV, probably heading to another friend's house to spread more poison and plot more schemes. But it didn't matter anymore. The game was over, and I had won. That night, I sat on my front porch with a beer and watched the sun set over the neighborhood where Lena and I had planned to grow old together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new possibilities, maybe even new love. But tonight, I was content to sit alone with the knowledge that I had stood up for myself when it mattered most. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. "You're pathetic. This isn't over." I deleted the message without responding. Some people never learn that the worth of a man isn't measured by what he has, but by what he's willing to fight for. And I had fought for everything that mattered.